By the end of this video, I hope, have convinced you that the opening episode of Haikyu is not only the greatest first episode of any anime ever, but also just one of the greatest pilot episodes in TV history, right up there with the likes of Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. Even if you haven't seen this show, I will explain it so that you will be able to follow along in this video and understand what is so awesome about Haikyu. Now, rather than just gush about what I like about it, I want to set out some categories from the go for what a great first episode should do. Firstly, and most obviously, it should introduce the main character and potentially a few of the other significant characters in the show. And importantly, it should make us like or respect them. We need to at least be sympathetic to whatever cause they're striving towards. If they want to be the greatest Pokemon trainer of all time, we need to know this and understand why they want to do this. This leads nicely to concept number 2. A good pilot episode should lay out our main character's philosophy and potentially the show's philosophy. What I mean by that is, what is our protagonist's worldview? Not just what they want, but how do they see their place in the world? And how does the world reflect that back onto them? Is it a fun world that they just want to goof off and enjoy? Or is it a brutal, cruel world that they want to change? Concept number 3. It should set up the basic structure of the series as a whole. Tell us, the audience, what we can expect from the rest of the show and how it might progress. This is a key point for creating good pilot episodes that immediately make you go, alright, I gotta watch the next episode right now. And finally, and this is one of the most important concepts, number 4, it should make us care about all of this. A lot of shows can, theoretically, do these things right, but we're left feeling like, what's the point of what I'm watching? A good first episode makes us care about the characters and also what they care about. This ties in with the idea of stakes. What is at stake in the show for the protagonist and the wider world? Do we care if they succeed or fail? What happens if they do? This is something we'll talk about later in this video. In fact, we're going to expand on all of these concepts as the video goes on, so I can explain more why they're important and why they're effective. But right now, let's not wait any further and let's dive into Haikyu Episode 1, the greatest first episode anime has ever produced. For those who don't know, Haikyu is an anime about the Karasuno High School Volleyball Club and their journey of growing together and competing as a team. If you're thinking, who the hell cares about high school volleyball and how could it possibly make for a compelling TV show, then you're exactly where I was when I first started the show, and probably most other viewers of Haikyu too. But don't worry, that feeling will go away soon enough. Although it's shrouded in a lot of mystery, the opening minute of the show does a lot to set up its main themes and sort of answer this question. As we open, we see just the feet of some characters and it's unclear who or what we're seeing. But then a voiceover begins. The voice, which we will soon recognize as that of the protagonist Hinata Shoyo, talks about there being a tall wall that looms in front of him. He longs to see past this wall, but he knows he can't do it alone. He sounds a bit downbeat about this, until he adds that he's in fact not alone, that he has people around him who will help him overcome this wall, and as he says that, we see those other people emerge before they all shout, "Let's play." Right off the bat, what we get here is the establishing of the philosophy of the show, and also of Hinata specifically. The tall wall, of course, is blockers on a volleyball court, who Hinata wants to beat and see past. But he's short, too short, most people would say, to be a volleyball player. So he knows this is not something he can overcome easily on his own. That's where he will need to rely on his teammates. And on cue, they appear in the shot to show this. This is Hinata's philosophy laid out in the absolute opening minute of the show, that he is desperate to succeed at volleyball, specifically as a spiker, despite the biological disadvantage he's been handed. But where he might not be the tallest, one skill he does have is the ability to make friends that he can rely on, something we'll explore more in a minute. On top of that, one of the key themes throughout Haikyu is the idea that volleyball is not a sport you play alone. This is a sentiment expressed again and again in the show, especially by the more wise characters like coaches and senior players who know how the sport works. This is a concept that we'll see in a minute one of the other characters struggle with in Kageyama. So while it's not immediately clear what this philosophical first minute of the show means, it's actually thematically really significant in what it's setting up. Now, I said that Haikyu was about Karasuno High School Volleyball Club, But it doesn't start there. In fact, the first episode is a lot simpler, focusing on just one and then two of the main characters from the show, Hinata Shoyo and Tobio Kageyama. And it establishes their journey of getting to the Karasuno High School volleyball team. This makes sense, obviously, because if you try to introduce like 10 characters in one episode, well, that would be a mess of a show. So, after the intro song finishes, we find ourselves following a young Hinata, still in elementary school at this point, as he passes by a TV shop broadcasting the Japanese national high school volleyball tournament. Two older men are watching and appreciating the plays being made when Hinata's eye is suddenly caught by one player in particular, Karasuno High School's number 10, the one the commentators refer to as the Little Giant. This is what's known in scriptwriting as the inciting incident, the moment in a film or TV show that changes the status quo and basically kicks off the real story for the main character. In Breaking Bad, this is Walter White's cancer diagnosis. Knowing that he only has a limited amount of time to live is what spurs Walt to look at how he can make money fast and eventually leads to him making meth. In House of Cards, this is Frank Underwood being told that he's not going to be made Secretary of State like he was promised he would be. And this sets him on a path of destruction and conniving that would allow him to rise to the level of political power that he craves. In Haikyu, it's just Hinata seeing the Little Giant play for the first time. Seeing another player who is small like him, but somehow be so imposing and impactful and skillful at volleyball inspires Hinata and sets him on the path to just become obsessed with volleyball. As we're watching this happen, we also establish one really cool thing that Haikyu does. As Hinata's watching the Little Giant jump, he perceives him as if he has wings. Crow's wings specifically, because karas means crow in Japanese and is a play on the name of the school Karasuno, which means crows, as in crow apostrophe S. Building on from this, when the Little Giant hits his spike, it booms out like an explosion for Hinata, with feathers scattering through the wind. Now what's cool about this is two things. First is the elevation of simple everyday things into something spectacular. Something that Haikyu does really, really well. All this actually is a high school volleyball player hitting one spike. It's really mundane in reality. But to the characters in the show, it's amazing. It's special. And we as an audience need to feel that if we're going to be invested in the show. And so Haikyu often turns these simple things into poetic and philosophical ideas that make it seem that much grander and that much cooler. And it does this by using the actual point of view of the characters within the show, rather than as the objective reality of it. The Little Giant isn't actually flying. It's just Hinata watching him and perceiving him to be looking like he's flying. This is how Hinata sees the events unfold, not how they're actually unfolding. And we always get important establishing shots showing this, like this one here. Metaphors like this are an absolute staple of Haikyu throughout the show, and it frequently uses symbols to tell us something more deep about its characters. Like the king symbol we'll see in a minute with Kageyama, but another example of this would be the moon symbol associated with the character Tsukishima, which is a reference to his name, Tsuki meaning moon in Japanese. But this also references his darker, more brooding personality, because he's someone who's always trying to play it cool and act like everyone around him is lame. So for him, we get the darkness of the moon. This then contrasts with Hinata, who is symbolized by the sun, representing how he's much more of a cheerful and effervescent person who seeks to brighten up everyone around him. And in kanji, hi means sun. So again, the metaphors continue. But whenever these metaphors are used, they're never literal. There are no supernatural elements in Haikyu. It's just how a certain character is perceiving the world. And in this case, it's Hinata perceiving the Little Giant as this larger-than-life figure, which he is to him. After watching this, Hinata begins to idolize the Little Giant and want to become like him. So of course, this person becomes like a supernatural hero to him, with the power to seem like he can fly like a crow. So already, we're barely 3 minutes into the show, and we've already hit some big points on those markers that are laid down at the start of the video. We've been told the show's overall philosophy about the importance of working together in volleyball and the passion of the sport, and we've been introduced, albeit just briefly at the moment, to the main character. But while we don't know him too well yet, we've already learned something incredibly important about him, something that some shows will literally never explain: why our main character does what he does. We've already learned what motivates him and what he wants to become, without even a word of dialogue being directly spoken by him. Now, once this scene is over, we then jump forwards in time and we're told that it's now 3 years later. Hinata and a small group of boys, who are now all middle schoolers, head into the gymnasium, and we learn from their dialogue that they are here for their first ever volleyball tournament. As they keep talking, we also learn something else. Something that's another awesome theme of what Haikyu does, especially in this episode. The boys, as they're discussing, mention that it's been 3 years of hard work to get here, and that this is an opportunity that they intend to make the most of.
I've waited 3 long years for this!
That's true. I guess it is kind of amazing that we made it this far.
Now, if you're watching this video, you've presumably seen other anime besides Haikyu. And if you haven't, then kudos. I commend you for being open-minded enough to click and watch this video this far. I'm sure people in the comments will happily recommend some great anime for you to follow up on. But here, Haikyu actually exploits a convention of anime to set us up, spoiler alert, for failure later. Normally in anime, if we get told that a character is in training for 3 years, we expect them to come out as a badass. We've been shown Hinata's inciting incident, and then we're told that he's been struggling for 3 years, and now he's here as the captain of his volleyball team. This is normally when an anime protagonist turns up and destroys the competition. We'll see how that pans out for Hinata in just a minute. I just wanted to flag this up for now. Now, one final thing to note before we go further in this episode is what we learn about Hinata as a person here. We know what he wants, but what is he like? What is his personality? And here we get a good picture of it. Most prominently, we see that he's really kind and compassionate and sweet to his friends. He thanks them for coming, and he's emotional about this whole experience. They're all insistent that it's fine and they're happy to be here with him. But in his teary-eyed joy of being here, we can already see what even just a chance to play volleyball means to him.
Big deal. You too, first years! I'm so thankful you 3 decided to join the volleyball club with me this season!
Sure. We're pretty terrible at this whole thing, but okay.
Spare us the tears, Shoyo.
I'm not crying!
This is another principle of screenwriting applied here, although a lot more loosely. One of the most famous ideas in screenwriting is called Save the Cat. This is an idea from the book of the same name by Blake Snyder. And the idea is a simple one. Let's say you're writing a film and you want the viewing audience to quickly like your main character. Well, show them doing something undeniably nice, like saving a cat, for example. Anyone watching will instantly know that, okay, someone who saves a cat cannot be a bad person. So that's where the term and idea save the cat comes from. Interestingly, you can also do the opposite of this. In House of Cards, another one of those greatest TV pilot episodes, we meet Frank Underwood, our main character. In the first scene itself, Frank and his bodyguard find a dog outside of his house who's been hit by a car. The bodyguard goes to get help, and as Frank is left alone, he turns to the camera and begins talking to us. While doing so, he snaps the dog's neck, and he tells us that he's putting the dog out of its misery and that he's the guy who does what others don't have the guts to do. He gets the difficult, unpleasant things done. Not only does this tell us a lot about Frank and his personality, but it's also the literal opposite of saving the cat, killing the dog. We, the audience, know immediately that he's definitely not a traditionally good guy, and at the very least, we should be a little fearful of him or view him with suspicion. We sort of get examples of both of these in Haikyu, but in much milder, less clear-cut ways. As discussed, we see Hinata being really kind and sweet to his teammates, showing us that he's a nice, easygoing person, someone we should like. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit to talk about how this then contrasts to Kageyama, the other significant character we meet in this first episode. When we first see Kageyama practicing with his team, he is kinda mean, to say the least. He's demanding, blunt, short-tempered, and we immediately get the impression that even his teammates don't like him.
Your timing is too slow! A quick attack should be faster than that!
Sorry.
His coach tries to calm him down, but he doesn't seem to listen much even to him. So we get a very soft version of saving the cat and killing the dog, both here in this episode, as a way of telling us about the contrast between the two main characters. One is sweet and kind and patient, the other is strict, demanding, and intimidating. This theme of using Hinata and Kageyama as oppositional forces to each other will continue throughout this episode, but also, we'll see a great deal about what unites them. For now, let's go back to where we were in the episode. As Hinata's team enters the gymnasium, they soon come across their opponents for their first match, Kitagawa Daichi. The visual language of the screen used here is awesome in two ways. First, we immediately see how tall and intimidating these characters are, looming over Hinata's team, who now seem very tiny when compared to these new guys. You can also see the use of shadow here to show that not only are these guys so far away from Hinata, but they're also kind of scary and dark. But one player in particular catches Hinata's eye as he passes by. It's just a briefest of glimpses, but it's beautiful that as Kageyama walks by Hinata, he immediately sees a flash of a luxurious cape drifting by him, as if he's just been passed by royalty. This goes back to what I said about the use of a character's point of view in the show to elevate things from mundane into something more poetic or philosophical. Later in this scene, we see other players from other teams talking about Kitagawa Daichi, and they talk about how good this team are, how tall and strong they are, and how they're candidates to win this whole tournament. This already sets up the audience to know how we should view Hinata's opponents. Now, this is going to be a tough game. And remember what I said earlier, that this is all part of a setup to reverse our expectations. This is exactly the kind of foreboding that a normal anime would use to show how our main character is awesome, because after 3 years of training, he goes and immediately takes down the top dogs to show how cool and strong he is. But it won't quite play out that way. But more importantly, as they're talking, these other players fixate on one member of Kitagawa in particular, the setter Tobio Kageyama, who has been given the nickname the King of the Court. Even before Hinata knew of this nickname, he saw this flash of regality in Kageyama. And this is again such an elegant metaphor. Kageyama, as we've already seen a little bit and we will see more of, is confidence personified. He's good and he knows it. So of course, you'd expect that he carries himself with an air of swagger and assuredness, almost like he's royalty walking amongst peasants. He feels like he's better than everyone else here, and Hinata picks up on that immediately, presumably by his body language, and that's how we already see him perceiving Kageyama as a king, a distant, intimidating figure of power. And this only ties back into what I said about the use of metaphor to tell us more about our characters as people. Now, despite all these markers showing us how good these opponents are, Hinata is confident that he'll beat them, and his team are also reassuring of him, saying that, yeah, Hinata's jumping power is incredible, and so they can still win. Again, setting us up as the audience to believe that he might actually win.
Damn it, we're gonna be going up against these freaking guys?
It'll be fine! I don't care how big they are! I'll bust right through them!
Maybe you're right, Hinata. You are a really good jumper.
You've got this.
But while we're being led to believe that Hinata might just possess some all-conquering prowess, we're also shown our hero's fatal flaw. After all, every hero has to have one. And in this case, it's that Hinata has a nervous stomach. And from the anxiety of all this, he excuses himself to rush to the bathroom. As he's heading there, he overhears some members of Kitagawa Daichi talking about him and his team. Trash talking them, to be specific. They mock them, saying that Hinata's team look like elementary school kids, and even as Hinata directly tries to push back, saying that his team actually came here to win, these bullies brush him off. As they laugh in his face, it sets up two things for us. One, it continues to stack those odds. The players on the opposing team view Hinata as absolutely zero threat, so we're getting more and more indicators that this is a game that the outsiders think has only one outcome. This goes back to the idea of stakes. It's ramping up the idea of what's at stake here. But secondly, it kinda just makes us mad. No one likes watching a bully, and we as human beings always like rooting for the underdog. So for the audience, seeing Hinata being mocked like this, after we know he's been working hard, makes us want to see him win even more, just so that he can rub it in the face of these cocky assholes. But it's not Hinata who ultimately shuts these guys down. It's actually Kageyama. As soon as he enters the scene, the atmosphere changes completely. These fringe players are immediately intimidated by him, and by the way they act around Kageyama, we can see that he's kind of feared, even by the people around him. He's someone who demands respect. More important though is what comes next. Kageyama shuts these bullies up. He snaps at them, telling them that they're not even bench warmers for the team yet, so how can they have the audacity to mock anyone else's strength? This is Kageyama's save the cat moment. Only in this case, it's Hinata who's the cat. He sticks up for the bullied Hinata and conducts himself with honor, showing his opponent respect even when on the face of it, they seem to be no match for his team. This lets us as the audience know that no matter how demanding or intimidating Kageyama might be, he's not a bad person. He's just someone with a certain set of beliefs about life and volleyball. And in the next few minutes on screen, we see exactly what those are. As the bullies are chased away, Kageyama and Hinata begin an exchange of words, which is really an exchange of worldviews. Hinata says he's going to win, a sentiment Kageyama is unconvinced by. Hinata continues that even though he isn't tall, he can jump, and if he tries hard, he can win. Here, Kageyama interrupts him, saying that trying hard isn't good enough. What we can see here is how they both view the world differently. Kageyama is someone who believes only in the supremacy of talent and ability in volleyball. His worldview is that you have to be the best player on the court if you want to win, and that's the only thing to strive for. For Hinata, it's a lot different. He sees volleyball as something that you put your effort, your heart, and your belief into, and the person who tries the hardest can win. But they're both on the same page about one thing. They both really want to win. They want to win and they want to keep playing volleyball, the sport they love, and it's the thing that ultimately unites them despite their differences. Hinata says his team is going to win this first match, and then the second match, and then the next match, and Kageyama in turn throws down a challenge. He says that in the first match, the second match, the playoffs, the nationals, he will be there, and he will always win. Two really awesome things are happening here. One, a small detail is that Hinata actually says, the six of us can finally play volleyball, referring to his team, and that they are going to make sure that they're going to win now that they're here. For those of you who are only listening right now as you absent-mindedly scroll on your phone, I actually have to use a clip now from the subbed version of Haikyu to show you what I'm talking about, because unfortunately, the dubbed version decided not to translate this linguistic nuance. I've used the English dubbed version for this video so far, just because it's easier to listen to, but this is just one of the many reasons why dubs are usually terrible, and I highly recommend you do watch the sub version if you have not seen Haikyu yet. So yeah, here is the clip.
やっとちゃんとコートで6人でバレーができるんだ。1回戦も2回戦も勝っていっぱい試合してるんだ俺たちは。
Kageyama meanwhile says, I will win. I will win the first game, the playoffs, the nationals.
1回戦も2回戦も決勝も全国も勝ってコートに立つのはこの俺だ。
Even in just the way that these two characters speak, they are telling us about how they view the world. Hinata, someone who believes in teamwork and kindness, is clashing with Kageyama, who only looks to himself. He only cares about his own strength. The other thing we see here is that the show again plays with our expectations. This kind of face-off, one great rival versus another, is another classic in anime. Usually, what it results in is the standard hero versus villain dichotomy. We expect, with Kageyama saying that he will be blocking Hinata's way on every step of his journey, that Kageyama might just be the ultimate villain of the show. The character that will keep trying to stop Hinata and who Hinata will have to overcome at least once, if not repeatedly. But as we'll see later, that's not the case. For now, we're just giving clear examples of how these two people are completely different in their worldviews, clashing over the one thing they both actually agree on, their obsession with winning every game of volleyball they play. As this scene ends, both characters return to the court, and now we see that moment I brought up earlier, of Kageyama practicing with his team. We're shown that he's really good, and the other characters watching remark on this. So we now know he's not just all talk, he is the real deal. But we also see his fatal flaw. He's self-centered and lacks compassion, yelling at his teammates for not being on his level. As his coach comes in, he tries to teach him about that principle of volleyball and the key philosophy of Haikyu that I told you about at the start of the show.
Kageyama, you shouldn't be obsessing over speed. It isn't about your personal technique. It's about how well you're able to set up the ball for the spiker to hit. You understand?
Yes, sir.
What matters is not your own skill, it's how you let the spiker hit the ball. This is a lesson that Kageyama will have to learn over the course of the show. His attitude of trying to make everyone adjust to his desires and demands is not how volleyball is played. Volleyball is a team sport, and it's about everyone accommodating each other's quirks and playstyles. As a setter, he should be the one trying to bring out the best of his teammates, not demanding that they follow his way. Something that again contrasts him with Hinata. While Kageyama divides his team, Hinata brings his together.
I'm sorry.
Nah, don't worry about it.
You got this!
This plays into point number 3 that I mentioned at the start of the video, giving us a good idea of where the show can go. We're already shown here where the characters have room to grow, rather than creating problems halfway through the series. Now, here we also get a beautiful little setup in that we're given an explanation of the mechanics of volleyball. Haikyu rightly assumes that many, if not most, people watching this have no clue as to the rules of volleyball. I certainly didn't. But if it sat down and explained all of the rules, well, then that would be the entire episode in of itself. Instead, the show gives us just enough information to understand the important plot points, and here, we get the classic trick that TV shows and films use, which is where one character who doesn't know anything asks another character to explain something to him. In this case, what is a setter? The role that Kageyama plays. This allows the show to teach us, the audience, what a setter is with an explainer, under the guise of teaching this one character. The setter, as we learn, is the one who sets up the ball for his teammates to hit the final spike onto the other side of the court. Now, practice finishes, and we're almost ready to begin the match. Once more, we get an amazing use of visual language here to tell us something important, but still in a humorous way. On the left side of the court, we see Kitagawa Daichi looking ready to play. Then, the camera slowly pans all the way across the court to Hinata's team, where we see that they're barely fitting in frame at the height where the other team was. So the camera then tilts down to show us our short and nervous heroes. Funny and effective in showing us the mismatch between the teams here. Then the game begins, and we can already see two things. A, that Hinata's team sucks. They're barely able to connect with the ball and get anything done. But B, we also see how nice Hinata is again. He's supportive and encouraging, even when his teammates make a mistake and cost the team a point. Once more, this is a contrast to Kageyama. But not long after the game begins, we're taken out of it and sent on a flashback to learn about how Hinata got here. And we learn so much from these few minutes of footage. We're shown the struggle that Hinata had to go through that his teammates had mentioned at the start of the episode. We see how there isn't even a volleyball team at his school, and he's the only member of the club, how he has to practice alone. But importantly, we see just how insatiable he is to play volleyball and how determined he is to make it happen. Every single chance he gets, he's pestering his friends to give him even just one single toss that he can hit.
So that
You're
happened.
on a break,
Wow,
right,
nice.
Izumi?
Huh?
Set me up for some spikes.
Why would I do that?
I just want to see if I can hit a good spike.
No way, dude. I don't even know how.
All you have to do is throw it so I can hit it.
I can't, okay? The upperclassmen
Over
are
here.
watching. Oh, okay, one sec.
We can even see from Hinata's friends' reactions that he's absolutely relentless. The minute they see him, they know he's going to ask them for help. This scene, for example, is beautiful, where Hinata is practicing on his own and his friend sees him. You can see from his friend's expression that he understands how hard this is for Hinata. He's sympathetic and almost a little pained. But we can also see that the minute he knows Hinata has seen him, he has to run away because he knows he'll get dragged into playing volleyball with him. This is perfect storytelling because it really quickly shows us the struggles that Hinata has faced from the point of view of his friends. And again, it shows us more about his personality. How even when he's literally knocked down, he's still a happy-go-lucky guy, and all he wants to do is play some volleyball. Then finally, we get the all-important, spine-tinglingly cool moment we've all been waiting for. After clearly pestering him, Hinata has finally managed to get his friend to hit him a few tosses in this flashback. His friend complains that he's tired, his arms are clearly sore and red, and Hinata begs for just one more toss, one final toss for real. Begrudgingly, his friend agrees, and he throws up a toss. But it's wayward. His friend starts to apologize, and we, the viewing audience, think, well, the toss is off, so he'll have to throw it again. And then we see it. The magic of how Haikyu creates incredible moments of awe.
Ready? Oh, oops.
The music kicks in, and Hinata immediately springs off the spot, his feet planting into the ground before he leaps up into the air. Take a look at this shot. The Hinata who we know is small and unintimidating is suddenly high up in the air, almost like he's flying. Now he seems so tall, so imposing, and we can see that by the fact that he casts this huge shadow over his friend. He didn't get any bigger, and yet he feels it. It feels like he's this completely different, awe-inspiring, cool figure when he's playing volleyball. The sun is shining from behind him. Again, the sun imagery tied to Hinata, showing us how he's this bright, almost overwhelming force that's impossible not to be drawn to. And that's how we feel watching. That moment of awe is conveyed to us as we think, damn, look at Hinata go. Then we cut from that shot to the present day, and Hinata jumps up for a spike in the real match, mirroring those same moves he made before. This time we're shown he's impressive, not by the reaction of his friend, but by the reaction of his opponent. Kageyama is immediately impressed and put on alert. Remember that this is a Kageyama who we have just seen is demanding, is absolutely brutal and exacting in what he expects, and he's got incredible talent himself. So when a character like that is visibly impressed, we know that as the audience, we should be too. It's a brilliant way of using the context from within the story world to give us the tools to understand how we should view what is happening, how remarkable or unremarkable something is. But as you've probably learned by now, Haikyu doesn't do things the easy way. Just as we get this awesome, cool moment where Hinata seems like he's gonna dominate the court, he's immediately shut down. His spike fails, and he himself is devastated. Both he and the audience get our first taste of brutal reality. This isn't going to be a show where the main character just gets his way and wins all the time. This is going to be something different. And it's such a great play on our expectations. After this, the show goes to an ad break, and when we come back, we see we're already deep into the second set, and our team is on the verge of losing. If a team scores 25 points without a deuce, they win the game in volleyball. And we're told that all the points Hinata's team have gotten are from unforced errors. And then we see him trying to spike and being shut out again. That's when Hinata remarks, "This is bad. I can't see the other side of the wall." Now, this, if you remember, is a reference to that philosophical opening about wanting to see the other side of the wall and not being able to do so without his team. Right now, Hinata's team can't help him, but soon enough, he'll get one that maybe can. So this is where we introduce the final key concept of this episode, the unrelenting desire to win and never give up. As the points continue, Kageyama is as demanding as ever, getting angrier and angrier at his teammates for not being fast enough to match the speed of his toss. That teammate and then another one complain that they don't understand why Kageyama is trying so hard. The opponents in front of them are not even a challenge. Overhearing this, he snaps, asking, "When will you get serious then?"
The real question is, why aren't you guys taking this game seriously?
Dude, chill. It's not the time.
Check that out.
The scorers watching remark that Kageyama is clearly a very good player, but he looks like he's trying to play volleyball by himself. This is just another reaffirmation of what we've already discussed a lot in this video, of the contrasting philosophies of Kageyama and Hinata, and Kageyama's fatal flaw. But in the point right after this, we're immediately shown that although they have these different beliefs and they're on opposite sides of the net, Kageyama and Hinata are a lot more similar than it might seem on the surface. A receive from Hinata's team goes awry, and the ball flies backwards, looking like it's going to go out. Everyone else watching is basically sure that this point is as good as over, but there's only two people on the court who don't feel that way. Hinata, who chases it relentlessly, and Kageyama, who believes that Hinata could still get it.
It's not over until the ball hits the ground.
Ultimately, he can't, and he almost injures himself in the process. But this moment then triggers a really significant piece of dialogue that will set a marker for Kageyama and Hinata's relationship for basically the rest of the show. One of Hinata's teammates can't take it anymore. He asks Hinata, "Why are you trying so hard? They're out of our league and we don't want to get injured, right? So why must we keep doing this?" Immediately, he worries that he might have blurted something out that will offend Hinata. But hilariously, Hinata has no idea what he means by this, and we're given the trademark Haikyu stare, the distinct and spine-tinglingly cool expression that all Haikyu characters give when they're dead serious about their volleyball. Hinata simply replies with the following.
I don't really understand what you're asking me. But it's not over.
This sends a chill not only down this teammate's spine, more importantly, Kageyama's, who then reflects on what all of this means. We hear his internal thoughts where basically he agrees with Hinata that this one simple concept is the ultimate key to volleyball and competing in general. No matter how hard the challenge, you have to keep going until you've lost. Until that last ball drops onto the court, you keep giving it 100%, no matter what. And to show this point more prominently, we then see a rally take place where Hinata's team work hard to get the ball back in, but Kageyama's teammate lazily gives up on the ball, and Hinata scores his first legitimate point, much to the delight of everyone watching, including the unbiased scorers, which is super cute and endearing. Again, this prompts Kageyama to yell at his teammate that he shouldn't have given up on that ball. The teammate replies that the score gap is way too wide and that a miracle would need to take place for anything to change. Kageyama interjects and says that that last point was no miracle, but the consequence of Hinata's hard work. That's when he flashes back in his mind to Hinata's words earlier about trying his hardest and that would be enough for his team to win, challenging Kageyama's worldview. Now, the stage is set. Hinata's team is down match point. If they fail even once, it's over. But momentum is finally swung their way. They scored their first point, Kageyama is now rattled and believing in Hinata's strength, and then we get one of the most incredible moments of any anime or TV show I've ever seen. Hinata's team get an easy receive, and a chance to comfortably set him up for a good spike. Having just scored his first point, surely Hinata will be in a good position to bury this one too. This one point could lead to more points, which could lead to a comeback. But the unthinkable happens. The setter on Hinata's team fails his toss and accidentally sends it behind him rather than in front where Hinata is. The music cuts. The background goes black. All is lost. Our hearts collectively sink. We see Kageyama thinking to himself. He quickly notes, was that a toss miss? Yes, it was. Looks like there's no one there to receive this. And then, flying over like a blur, a shadowy figure rises high above the net, ready to spike the ball. The music kicks back in, and now the spotlight shines on Kageyama as we focus on his internal thoughts again. He's flabbergasted. He cannot understand how Hinata is there. He was watching him. He had him covered. The toss was sent in the wrong direction. There's no way Hinata should be there. But he's there. How? Why? This is finally that epic payoff moment. The point this entire episode has been building up to. All the hard work, all the struggle that Hinata has been going through is for this one glorious point. All of Kageyama's lofty ideals and philosophies of the world are physically crumbling before him as he chases after Hinata, and it seems like Hinata might actually win. Do we dare believe, as the audience, that the comeback is about to start? That Hinata's team will pull off a fairy tale miracle? With a powerful boom, Hinata spikes the ball and it connects beautifully, landing on the court before anyone can even try to stop it. He crashes to the ground and onto the plastic hoardings. But immediately he gets up, no concern for his physical health, and looks to see that the referee has called it out. The scuff mark on the floor clearly shows the shot was indeed out. Hinata's team has lost, and our main character tastes defeat. Once more, Haikyu does what it does so brilliantly and stays true to life, playing with our expectations of what we wished would have happened. This isn't a straightforward story of good and evil where the hero always triumphs. Hinata, like any competitor in life, has to taste bitter defeat, at least for now. But as Hinata is devastated in his loss, Kageyama is internally admiring his incredible prowess.
It hurt. I could barely keep track of him. That was the setter's mistake. There's no way he could have anticipated it.
He cannot believe how Hinata managed to even make it to that shot, let alone nearly pull off the winner. He remarks on how awesome Hinata's physical abilities are, but more importantly, his incredible hunger to win. In the way he speaks to himself, we can see that he's both in awe and partly jealous and more than slightly angry at Hinata. He then speaks up, lashing out at Hinata, asking him, "What were you doing these last 3 years?" As if to imply that Hinata must have been wasting his time, not fulfilling his potential. Hinata is devastated, but tellingly, while Kageyama stands alone, Hinata's teammates are right behind him, with one of them ready to throw hands for him as he barks back that Kageyama has no idea the struggle Hinata has been through for these last 3 years. And of course, we the audience know too. We've seen it. So this hits us extra hard. It helps us sympathize even more with how bad it must feel for Hinata right now. But again, it all plays into this beautiful dynamic between our two main characters. Their complicated relationship of being opposites but also being similar, of being in awe of each other but also kinda hating each other. And it's just great. Meanwhile, watching from above, mysterious figures appear again. They remark on how talented Kageyama is. But one of them says, "My money is on that little guy." On the back of their jackets, Karasuno High School Volleyball Club. The foreshadowing is done. The stage is set. We then move outside to after the game, where Hinata's friends try to console him on the loss, saying that the other team was just too strong. But Hinata again expresses his worldview. It doesn't matter who's weak or strong. The winner gets to stay on the court and keep playing volleyball. And that's all that matters to him. The desire to just keep playing volleyball. One more point, one more time. Emboldened, Hinata rushes down to confront Kageyama, and teary-eyed, he tells him that if Kageyama is the king that rules the court, then Hinata will be the one to defeat him and be the last player standing. Again, Kageyama replies by emphasizing his worldview. He says that only the strong can win. So if Hinata wants to stay on the court, then he has to become the strongest. Once more, we see the perfect summary of the first episode and our two main characters, opposing worldviews, united by the same cause. After thanking his friends and making them teary-eyed in turn, Hinata then begins on a training arc, where we see him working to get better once again. This time we can see even more people rallying around him, showing why he's not only the opposite of Kageyama, but also a great main character for a show, because he's someone that others quickly like and want to root for, which is perfect for us as the audience to do the same. As the montage ends, we see that Hinata is finally here. He's finally arrived at Karasuno High School. He's excited, he's optimistic, and most of all, he's keen on finally getting the chance to beat that king of the court and get his revenge. And in this one final scene of the first episode, Haikyu shows us that it has one last twist to give us. Hinata is flying into the gymnasium, plotting his revenge out loud, saying how he can't wait to beat that king, and then he walks in to find one lone figure practicing his serve. It's none other than Kageyama, confirming that Kageyama will not be his mortal enemy, but in fact, his teammate. The perfect end to this first episode, because it refuses to give our characters an easy out. In fact, it forces them to collide their worldviews and find a way to unify them. Hinata believes in teamwork, remember, and that working together will overcome anything. Well, how can he do that when he has to work with his arch enemy, the guy he promised to beat and overcome to be the last one standing? And Kageyama on the other side, well, he only cares about himself. He only believes in becoming the strongest. So how will he accept a guy who he considers weak as his teammate? He can't just crush Hinata and move on now. He has to accommodate this person because they're going to be on the same side. And as the setter, he has to toss to him. Now if we go back to those concepts that I laid out at the start of the video, which I know was a very long time ago, but bear with me, this hits perfectly on point 3. Set up the show. In fact, we can see that all those points have now been hit, and let me go over how. We'll start with point 1. Introduce the main character and potentially other significant characters, and we'll throw a bit of point 2 in here too. Introduce that character and the show's philosophy. We have, over the course of this episode, been given a great insight into who Hinata is as a person. We've seen what motivates him, that being his love for volleyball and his desire to be like the little giant. We've seen that he's determined, relentless, and hungry to win. And we've seen that he's a really kind and patient friend, and someone who is happy-go-lucky even in the face of adversity. So we've already learned a lot about him in just a 20-ish minute episode. On top of that, we've also learned a decent bit about the second most significant character in the show, Kageyama. We've learned about Kageyama's demanding nature, his desire for volleyball perfection, and his short temper. But we've also learned that he's someone with a sense of honor, and someone who is earnest in his pursuit of winning. Moreover, we've also seen what the philosophy of both characters is and how they clash and contrast. Where Hinata believes in teamwork and the power of trying hard, Kageyama believes only in the value of raw ability and of the importance of doing it by yourself, because he doesn't trust other people to keep up with his level. We've seen as well through the characters of Kageyama's coach and the scoreboard guys that the show itself largely agrees with Hinata's worldview, where the more knowledgeable characters seem to agree that volleyball is a sport where only 6 people can win together, not one individual. But we also see by the fact that Kageyama ultimately wins that there is an obvious strength to just being very good. Ultimately, Kageyama does also lose later in the tournament, and that shows us that the truth is probably somewhere in between. That you do need to be strong, but you need to believe in and work with your teammates to truly be successful, as well as working hard. Now let's look at point 3, setting up the series as a whole. As I've already mentioned, the end of the first episode gives us an amazing foundation point for the rest of the series, because we've been led throughout the episode into believing that Hinata and Kageyama are going to be at odds with each other, and that's how both characters see themselves too. But by forcing them onto the same team, we now know they'll have to spend the rest of the series not only learning to work together, but also to find a compromise for their differing worldviews. Just on the level of good television, it's also really nice because we already know that we have 2 characters in conflict with each other. So we can already imagine that there's going to be lots of room for hijinks and fun situations for them to be put in, and of course, that is what happens. Finally, concept number 4, making us care about all of this. This is where I think the heart of Haikyu lies, where it really shines and stands out to me as such an amazing show. It's through all these little moments that the show makes us care for and understand our characters, to feel their joys and their pains. It's by seeing how much the little giant and volleyball mean to Hinata that we can understand why he wants this so badly. When we see him struggling to practice volleyball, we can all understand how hard he's worked. We all know on some level how painful that kind of effort and struggle is, and so when we do see him fail, when we do see him lose, we feel that same pain for Hinata that we might know from our own lives. We've all known failure, and we know how much worse it feels when you want something so badly and you just can't get it. But it is in seeing how determined Hinata is and how unshakable he is in his conviction that we as the viewer can also come away feeling inspired. We want him to win. We want him to succeed where others and where maybe even we would have given up or failed. All of this also goes for Kageyama. We see how these 2 just live and breathe volleyball where all the rest of their teammates just don't. Multiple times throughout the episode, we see others give up or want to give up, but they never do. And that kind of determination is just so laudable that we can't help but feel for these guys and root for them. In terms of stakes, there's not a lot at stake here, just some children's volleyball. And yet, it is because the show is so grounded and realistic that it becomes so relatable, and also it's plausible for everything to go wrong and really hurt our characters, which we don't want. So it is for all of these reasons and so many more that I just love Haikyu and love this first episode in particular. I hope I've done a good job explaining to you why this is, in my opinion, anime's greatest first episode. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment about what you enjoyed and what you might want to see me cover next. And don't forget to drop those anime recommendations either for the newcomers to the field. If you'd like to support me directly, then please consider supporting me financially via Patreon. And I'd like to thank my current patrons that you can see on screen right now, without whom I would not be able to keep making the videos I make. Check out the video description for that and many other links like my Discord server, where you can hang out and discuss films, TV, and anime with like-minded people. Please do check out some of the many video essays on this channel that I have, like Hinata and Kageyama, poured my heart and soul into, and I'm confident you'll enjoy them as well. But for now, that's it for this video. I hope to see you all again very soon.